Picture a used car lot on a slow Tuesday afternoon. Off in the back row, past the shiny lease turn-ins and the crossovers still wearing that new car smell, sits a boxy, faded paint Isuzu Rodeo. The asking price is less than what most people spend on a decent laptop. The odometer reads 265,000 miles, and it's still on the original engine. Nobody stops to look at it. Meanwhile, up front under the showroom lights, a 5-year-old crossover with barely 80,000 miles on the clock is getting winched onto a flatbed for its second transmission failure. That is not a coincidence, and it is not bad luck. That is the quiet, unglamorous, wildly profitable open secret sitting in plain sight on used car lots across America in 2026, and today we are dragging it out into the daylight. Here is the thesis, and it is backed by hard data, not vibes. Automotive research firm IC Cars has spent over a decade analyzing hundreds of millions of vehicles to figure out which ones actually survive to 200,000 miles and beyond, and the pattern is almost embarrassingly consistent. According to their most recent findings, the average vehicle on American roads has less than a 5% chance of ever crossing 250,000 miles. Full-size, truck-based SUVs with simple drivetrains blow that number away, generation after generation, study after study. The reason is not magic. It is engineering philosophy. In the 1990s and into the early 2000s, before turbochargers were stuffed under every hood and before continuously variable transmissions and 11-speed automatics became the norm, American and Japanese manufacturers were still building SUVs the old-fashioned way. Solid axles or simple independent front ends, cast-iron engine blocks with generous bearing surfaces, and transmissions with as few moving parts as they could get away with. These trucks were engineered to survive fleet duty, construction sites, and rental car abuse. The unintended side effect 4 decades later is that they refuse to die. And because they look like something your uncle drove to a job site in 1998, nobody wants them. Which means you can buy genuine 400,000-mile potential for pocket change. Before we count down the 10 most criminally overlooked high-mileage SUVs on the used market, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button, because we track down forgotten mechanical legends like this every single week, and you do not want to miss the next one. Let's get into it. Kicking off our countdown at number 10, we've got the Suzuki Grand Vitara, specifically the first-generation V6 models built from 1999 through 2004. When it launched, this little Suzuki did something nobody else in the compact SUV class was doing. It put a genuine 2.5-liter, 24-valve V6 under the hood, good for 155 horsepower and 160 pound-feet of torque, in a segment where everybody else was stuck with wheezy 4 cylinders. At the time, it was the only small SUV on sale in America with a 6-cylinder engine standing between it and a 4-cylinder economy crossover, and Suzuki bragged about that fact in every single advertisement. Underneath that surprisingly car-like cabin sits a proper ladder-style frame with real low-range gearing, meaning this thing can actually go off-road, not just look like it can. Owners have documented these things going the distance in a big way, with real-world reports of Grand Vitaras rolling past 345,000 miles on the original engine, transmission, and clutch, and others cruising past 210,000 miles without drama. The catch, and the reason it's dirt cheap today, is that Suzuki pulled out of the American car market entirely back in 2012. No more Suzuki dealerships, no more factory parts counter, so buyers assume it's an orphan and walk right past it. In reality, the mechanicals are simple enough that any independent shop can keep one alive forever, and the used market has no idea what it's sitting on. Moving up to number 9, we're talking about the Honda Passport, but specifically the first-generation trucks from 1994 through 1997. Here's the twist that most Honda shoppers never figure out. This so-called Honda is not actually a Honda underneath. It is a rebadged Isuzu Rodeo, built side by side with the real Rodeo on the same assembly line at the Subaru Isuzu plant in Lafayette, Indiana, sharing the same body-on-frame chassis, the same axles, and the same drivetrain. Base models got a 2.6-liter 4-cylinder making 120 horsepower, but the one you actually want is the 3.2-liter V6, which started at 175 horsepower and was bumped up to 190 horsepower for the 1996 model year, right before Honda dropped the 4-cylinder option entirely for 1997. It's overlooked for a painfully simple reason. It does not look, sound, or drive like any other Honda you have ever owned, so Honda loyalists skip right past it in search of something with a VTEC badge, never realizing they are ignoring a genuinely tough, body-on-frame Isuzu wearing a Honda grille and backed by Honda's dealer network and reputation. Sliding into number 8, we've got the Subaru Forester, specifically the first-generation SF models sold in America from 1998 through 2002. This was one of the very first crossover SUVs ever sold in the United States, built on the Impreza platform but jacked up into a tall wagon shape, and Subaru marketed it as being tough like an SUV but easy to drive like a car. Power came from the 2.5-liter EJ25 Boxer engine, producing around 165 horsepower, made it a Subaru symmetrical all-wheel drive system standard on every single trim, no exceptions. Now, in the interest of full data-driven honesty, we have to flag one real weak point. These early EJ25 engines are known for head gasket failures, and Subaru did revise the gasket material more than once trying to chase the problem down, so any Forester SF you're shopping needs a cooling system inspection before you hand over cash. But address that one issue and the Boxer engine's low center of gravity, inherent balance, and simple mechanical layout will happily push past 200,000 miles, all while returning fuel economy figures that make the truck-based competition on this list look downright wasteful. It gets ignored because it looks exactly like a tall, boring station wagon from the Clinton administration, which, frankly, it is, and that is precisely why it's cheap. At number 7, we're crossing into Mitsubishi territory with the first-generation Montero Sport, sold roughly from 1997 through 2004. Under the hood of the later, more desirable version sits a 3.5-liter, single overhead cam, 24-valve V6 pushing out 197 horsepower and 223 pound-feet of torque, with a reinforced engine block and a structural aluminum oil pan that Mitsubishi's engineers specifically built to survive off-road abuse and heavy towing. The whole truck rides on a proper independent double wishbone front suspension paired with a live rear axle, a combination that quietly makes it one of the more comfortable body-on-frame rides of its era. Owner reliability scores on this generation regularly land between 4.5 and 4.8 out of 5 stars, which is a genuinely elite rating for a 1990s body-on-frame SUV. So why does nobody want one? Simple. Mitsubishi's reputation in the United States took a serious hit in the 2000s and 2010s, the dealer network shrank dramatically, and buyers now assume any used Mitsubishi is an automatic parts sourcing nightmare. That fear is almost entirely unearned on this particular platform, and it means you can pick up a genuinely well-engineered, comfortable, off-road capable SUV for a fraction of what a comparable Toyota or Jeep would cost you. Number 6 takes us to the Nissan Pathfinder, the second-generation R50 chassis built from 1996 through 2004. Nissan did something genuinely clever with this generation, engineering what they called a monoframe structure, a unibody shell with fully welded-in steel frame rails underneath, which delivered roughly 3 times the torsional rigidity of the old body-on-frame Pathfinder while still being tough enough to take off-road. Early trucks ran the 3.3-liter VG33E V6, rated at 170 horsepower, while the facelift trucks got a serious upgrade starting with the 2001 model year. The 3.5-liter VQ35DE V6, jumping output all the way to 240 horsepower. Later trims added an all-mode 4-wheel drive system with a locking center differential, giving drivers a genuine low-range crawl gear alongside the everyday comfort of a unibody ride. This is consistently the SUV enthusiasts point to as the budget alternative to a Toyota 4Runner, delivering nearly identical off-road capability and long-term durability without what off-road forums love to call a Toyota tax on resale prices. It stays criminally under the radar because it wears bland, forgettable, late 90s Nissan styling that simply does not turn heads the way a boxy 4Runner or Land Cruiser does. Back to number 5, and we're circling back to the truck that opened this entire video. The Isuzu Rodeo. We're talking about both generations here, the first-generation trucks from 1991 through 1997, and the redesigned second-generation trucks from 1998 through 2004. Skip the anemic early 4-cylinder and the rare 3.1-liter GM-sourced V6, and go straight for Isuzu's own 3.2-liter V6, which climbed from 175 horsepower in 1993 all the way up to 190 horsepower by 1996. An archived Edmunds road test on the 1996 model specifically highlights owners reporting the engine still running strong well past 265,000 miles. The 4-wheel drive hardware on these trucks, including the heavy-duty BorgWarner transfer case, has a reputation among off-roaders as being essentially unbreakable. The catch is oil consumption on the V6 if it's not monitored, so check the dipstick before you buy. And just like Suzuki, Isuzu completely exited the American passenger vehicle market back in 2009, so there is no Isuzu dealership left to reassure nervous buyers, which tanks resale values and keeps genuinely excellent trucks parked in the back row where we found them. Number 4 is the Ford Explorer, but you have to be incredibly specific here, because this is a rare case where picking the wrong engine ruins everything. We are talking exclusively about the second-generation Explorer, built from 1995 through 2001, and exclusively the 4.0-liter overhead valve pushrod V6, not the later single overhead cam version. The OHV6 makes a modest 160 horsepower, but it is mechanically bulletproof, regularly running past 200,000 miles without ever having its valve covers removed. It's bolted to a chassis using Ford's twin traction beam front suspension, a design off-roaders still swear by today for its long wheel travel and its simplicity compared to the fully independent setups that came later. Compare that to the 4.0-liter SOHC6 that Ford introduced later in this same generation, which uses plastic timing chain guides that are notorious for shattering as early as 45,000 miles, sending debris straight through the engine. Buyers today lump every 90s Explorer together because of the well-documented Firestone tire controversy that hammered the Explorer's reputation in the press, but that saga was about tire pressure and suspension geometry, not the pushrod 6 under the hood. Find a clean, honest OHV-powered second-gen Explorer, and you are driving one of the most underappreciated high-mileage bargains on the entire used market. Number 3 brings the horsepower back up with the Dodge Durango, specifically the first-generation trucks built on the stretched and reinforced Dodge Dakota chassis from 1998 through 2003. The engine to hunt for is the 5.9-liter Magnum V8, a 360 cubic inch descendant of Chrysler's legendary small block family, producing 245 horsepower and 335 pound-feet of torque, backed by a 4-speed automatic transmission that traces its lineage straight back to the old, nearly indestructible TorqueFlite 3-speed. This combination gave the first-generation Durango a class-leading tow rating of 7,300 pounds when properly equipped, beating some genuine full-size SUVs of that era. For a couple of wild model years, Dodge even offered a factory-supercharged version of that same 5.9-liter Magnum, built with Shelby, that cranked out 360 horsepower, proving Chrysler engineers knew exactly how much abuse this V8 could take before it ever left the factory floor. Real owner accounts back up the hype. One Durango owner bought their truck at 138,000 miles and, 8 years later, had put it up over 211,000 miles with nothing but a single transmission replacement along the way. Another owner kept theirs for 12 straight years and reported never suffering a single mechanical failure. The reason it's overlooked is painfully simple. This thing drinks gasoline like it owes the refinery money, historically averaging somewhere around 13 miles per gallon in the city, and that scares away budget shoppers who never stop to notice how absurdly cheap the truck itself is to actually buy. Number 2, and we are firmly in Holy Grail territory now, is the Chevrolet Tahoe, specifically the first-generation GMT 400 trucks built from 1995 through 1999. Starting in 1996, these trucks received the L31 Vortec version of Chevrolet's 5.7-liter, 350 cubic inch small block V8, cranking out 255 horsepower and a massive 330 pound-feet of torque. This is arguably the single most mass-produced, most thoroughly proven V8 architecture in American automotive history, riding on a genuine separate ladder frame with a solid rear axle, sharing the overwhelming majority of its mechanical parts with the Chevy and GMC pickup trucks of the same era, which means parts availability today is essentially unlimited. This generation of Tahoe was Chevrolet's direct successor to the old full-size K5 Blazer, and it shares its bones with the GMC Yukon and the Chevy and GMC Suburban, so a stroll through any self-service junkyard in the country will turn up a mountain of cheap, compatible parts. Study after study from IC Cars has crowned full-size Chevrolet and GMC SUVs as some of the most likely vehicles in America to blow past 200,000 miles, and the Tahoe is consistently near the very top of that list. Yes, the 4-speed automatic transmission behind it has known weak points at extremely high mileage, and yes, the fuel injection system has a well-documented sensor quirk that can cause a rough idle. Neither issue is expensive to fix, and neither one comes close to killing that legendary small block V8 underneath. Which brings us, finally, to number 1, the undisputed holy grail of this entire list. The Jeep Grand Cherokee, first generation, chassis code ZJ, built from 1993 through 1998. Everything on this list has been building toward this one engine, because nothing else on the used SUV market carries the same mythical, borderline religious reputation as Jeep's 4.0-liter inline-six. This engine traces its DNA straight back to American Motors Corporation, built around a cast-iron block with a 7-main bearing crankshaft, more main bearing surface area than almost any V6 or V8 of its era, combined with the inherent natural balance that only an inline-six configuration can deliver. Bolt that engine to a rugged Dana 30 front axle and a Dana 35 or Dana 44 rear axle, running through a full-time 4-wheel drive transfer case, and you have a drivetrain that off-road mechanics still describe as nearly impossible to kill through neglect alone. At launch, it produced 190 horsepower and 225 pound-feet of torque, strong enough to help the ZJ Grand Cherokee win MotorTrend's Truck of the Year award in its debut year of 1993. Owners and mechanics across every corner of the internet refer to this engine, without a hint of irony, as the toughest workhorse Chrysler ever put into production. It is common, almost boringly common, to find these engines rolling past 200,000 miles on their original internals, having survived nothing more than oil changes, coolant flushes, and the occasional exhaust manifold replacement. The ZJ Grand Cherokee gets skipped today purely because of its dated, boxy, early 90s silhouette sitting on a used lot next to sleeker modern crossovers, and because most shoppers have no idea that the engine bolted underneath that dated sheet metal is arguably the single most durable 6-cylinder ever mass-produced for the American market. Find a rust-free example, treat that inline-six with basic respect, and 400,000 miles is not some outlandish fantasy. It is simply a matter of time. So there you have it, 10 SUVs sitting quietly on used lots across the country right now, buried under decades of unfair reputation, dated styling, and orphan brand paranoia, every single one of them capable of driving circles around a brand new lease that will not survive its own warranty period. Which one of these is sitting in your driveway right now, and how many miles have you already put on it? Drop that number in the comments, because we want to see who's actually out here proving this list right. Thanks for riding along, and we will see you in the next one.